let's go. Come on.
Okay,
What are you doing? What are you doing? We don't have room for that. No, we don't have room for that. Look, we all left our stuff over there. Just leave your stuff there. We've got to go. Come on. Dude, we are running out of time. Come on.
Okay, fine.
Awesome. You guys can clap it up for that. Hey, so this is your first time with us. We started a brand new series, relationship series, entitled Happily Ever After. And I'm so glad you're here. And that you made it back from last week. It was an awesome week. Power outages, you've probably already heard, but man, God used it in a powerful way. And so we're super glad that you're here to kick off or to pick up part 2 with us with a relationship series called Happily Ever After. So just to kind of catch us up from last week, we all have, right? Come on. We all have an invisible box of hopes, dreams, and desires, right? If you're single, if you're not dating yet, this box is very undefined. Or maybe you know what's in your box. Maybe you do. But this box is very undefined. If you're dating or engaged or in a committed relationship where it's complicated, I get it. If it's complicated, hopefully you've already talked about with your significant other what's inside of your box, right? Or if you're married, you should definitely know what's inside of his or her box. If you don't, that's kind of part of the problem. And we're going to talk a little bit about it today. But we all have a box of hopes, dreams, and desires, right? Maybe you have hopes, dreams, and desires as it relates to the future when it comes to this stuff, money, right? Maybe you're going to have a lot of money. Maybe you don't need a lot of money. Love will keep you alive, okay? Maybe you're gonna have a double income. You're gonna have a double income. You're gonna save yours and live off the other. That's what you told yourself until you moved to the Bay Area, right? Or maybe you're gonna have a budget. Or some of you are like, I don't want a budget. A budget sounds like an allowance. I don't want to go back to an allowance. Or maybe we have hopes and dreams and desires when it comes to a clean house. Like maybe you're not a chore person. Maybe you just want to spray some Febreze and it take care of the rest, right? Or we all have hopes and dreams and desires as it relates to time, right? How are you going to spend your discretionary time, right? You spend time with your friends or my friends. No, I don't want you to meet my friends, right? Or maybe Saturdays is your time or Sunday. Sunday is church day. No, Sunday is hike day, okay? And so we all have hopes, dreams, and desires as it relates to this idea of time and to a calendar as well, right? Jamie was so fierce. She didn't say this, but essentially this is why you need to talk about what's in your box. She said, when we got married, my family's going to have just 3 holidays, and you can have all the rest. She said, we can have Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter. You can have St. Patrick's Day, Halloween, right? Groundhog Day, right? And so maybe you have hopes, dreams, and desires as it relates to your calendar. You got to talk about that. And then maybe one of these, maybe you want to live in a house someday with a big backyard. You don't know what a backyard is because this is the Bay Area, but it's okay. Okay, maybe you have hopes, dreams, and desires of relates. Maybe you're gonna downsize. You're gonna keep it really simple, minimalistic, or maybe you're just gonna Airbnb for the rest of your life. That's okay. Maybe you have hopes, dreams, and desires that relates to what kind of car you're gonna drive someday. Maybe you're gonna keep your sports car, right? Maybe that's what you want to do, and maybe you're gonna talk him into trading something for something more practical, right? Or also maybe you want to have children someday, right? Maybe you want to have a little girl and maybe you, like me, you were the only child. You want to have more than one. You want to have children, right? And if you get 2 girls, you're going to keep going until you get a boy, right? Why not just have like a basketball team? And then there's also this idea of travel, right? You're going to travel. Maybe for you want to travel before you retire. Or maybe, no, I'm not going to, that's traditional. I'm going to travel now. I'm going to travel now. I'm not going to wait till I'm retired. Maybe you want to travel around the world. Or maybe not. Maybe because, hey, no, there's plenty to see here in the United States. It's up to you. You talk about that. And then every guy has hopes, dreams, and desires, and what he hopes his significant other will not wear to bed. And she's probably thinking, no, he just wants me to be happy. He just wants me to be comfortable. No, it's not true. And so there's that. There's also this idea of conflict, right? You got to resolve conflict someday. And maybe you grew up in a family where conflict was like, no, we just raise our voice. We just get it all out on the table, and at the end of the day, it's fine. And the other person's like, no, we don't raise our voice. That's insensitive. No, we just hash it out. But it's not how we're going to resolve conflict. And so maybe there's hopes and desires that relates to that. And then there's this other thing. I can't illustrate it. That is, how am I going to behave towards her? How am I going to behave towards him when, right? How am I going to act when she does or when he says, right? There's hopes, dreams, and desires. We all have a box of hopes, dreams, and desires. But at the end of the day, this box, at the end of the day, this box it might be defined for some of you, and some of you, it might not be quite defined. But there's certain things that influence what we put in our box, right? Kind of like what we've seen and heard, maybe what you've seen in culture, maybe what you've read in culture. Maybe you want to have a relationship like Kim and Kanye, right? So it's all about what we've seen and heard, but also primarily what influences what we put inside of this box is what we've experienced. This is the home you grew up in, and this is complicated. This is emotional, really. But maybe it's what you've experienced in the past that's influenced what you put in this box. And at the end of the day, though, when what you've experienced, it comes down to something that you're trying to avoid. Because at the end of the day, when you're trying to recreate something, right, you're either trying to avoid something from the past or recreate something brand new. You're trying to avoid something. My mom did it this way, my dad did this way. No. I would never have a relationship like that. You're trying to avoid something or you're trying to recreate something new. Ideally, though, at the center of your hopes, dreams, and desires is you. It's my dreams, it's my hopes, it's my desires. And at some point of the relationship, maybe, I don't know when this happens, at some point, maybe when you're dating, when you're engaged, or maybe after you get married, or maybe a year after you get married, maybe a couple years after you get married, at some point in the relationship, we take this box of hopes, dreams, and desires, and we hand it off to the next person. It says, here, make it come true. But here's the thing. This hopes, dreams, and desires, although it might be hopes, dreams, and desires for you, to them, it feels like expectations, right? And this every day of the week is pressure. It's heavy. It's a weight. It feels like a responsibility. It feels like a homework assignment that you have to kind of do. It's expectations. And expectations is a strong belief that something will happen or be the case in the future, right? It might not be the case now, but someday, won't we, right? Someday, won't we? We're not living in our dream house now, but someday we will, won't we? Won't we? It's a strong desire, strong belief that something will happen or be the case in the future. Maybe not now, but someday in the future. And again, you know this. I'm just putting language to what you already know. We're attempting to recreate something, right? Attempting to recreate or avoid something from the past transforms our hopes, dreams, and desires into expectations. And we talked about this last week, so I'm just going to go by it really quick. But when eyes collide, because that's what happens. It's not you and I collide. It's eyes collide. It's what I want. It's my hopes, my dreams. When eyes collide, several things happen, right? 4 of which happen. We're going to talk about the 5th one today. We leave. That's not what I bargained for. That's not what I want. That's not what I wanted. You didn't tell me about that. You weren't clear. You weren't honest. You didn't tell me up front. It's not what I signed up for. That would never be a reality for us. I can never live up to what you expect me to live up to, right? Eyes collide, we leave. And oftentimes, the opposite happens is we win, right? Generally speaking, there's someone in a relationship that's usually a more dominant personality. What happens is they power up and they win. We win, but oftentimes, now what happens, not just who wins, but conforms. This is the third response is we become a conformer, and essentially the conformer is this. It's I'll give up who I am to become somebody I'm not just for the sake of the happiness of the other person. Here's the thing about conforming. It works for a while. It does. For a while, it does. For a while. Because, one, it really works for the person because they win. They get everything they want. But also, it works for the conformer because the temperature goes down in a relationship, right? The tension kind of dissolves in a relationship. And so, but at the end of the day, when it comes to conforming, this is what happens. You lose respect for your partner, and your partner loses respect for you. So conforming, it works for a while. But then lastly, and this is the most common, is that we compromise. And for many people, they think, I think, for many people, they think that compromise is this is how we stay married. This is how we have a good relationship. This is how we stay, and compromise, it'll get you to the end. It'll go the distance, it will. But it's not fun because compromising is all about keeping track. It's keeping a scoreboard, right? Last year we spent with your family. No, and this year is my family. No, don't bring up your dad. He's sick. That's tough. I'm just kidding. But hey, no, don't bring it up. This is my year. We compromise. But in a compromised relationship, I mentioned this last time, is low trust. It's low trust because it's built on a contract. It's low trust. And when you have low trust, what do you have? You have low intimacy. And here's why. Because you cannot actually be intimate with somebody you're not willing to fully give yourself to, and you will not fully give yourself to somebody who you don't completely trust. It's low trust, low intimacy. If you're single, you want to know the key to great sex in marriage? If you know what it is? It has nothing to do with anything physical. It has nothing to do with sex. It has everything to do with intimacy. And intimacy is tied to trust. And when we leave, and when we win, or we conform, and when we compromise, what happens? For sure, we loses. We loses. And so expectations create this debt-debtor relationships. But at the end of the day, when it comes to my hopes, my dreams, my desires, what do I do with this box that's now been an expectation for the other person? And yes, last week we talked about this. We talked about this, remember. You decide. You decide that they don't owe you anything. She doesn't owe you. He doesn't owe you. They don't owe you anything. But you owe them everything. Right? Because happy couples know that they owe each other everything, but don't expect anything in return. That's just one of the things that happy ever after couples know. So, hopes, dreams, and desires. They owe you. No, they don't owe you anything. Right? You owe me clean socks. You owe me a clean house. You owe me to take care of the budget. You owe me to take care of our time and our calendar and make sure I enjoy it. No, you owe me kids. You owe me to play with the kids a certain amount of time. Look, you owe me. No. They don't owe you anything. And this is just how you decide to get these things back inside of here. Is that you have to decide that they just don't owe you anything. And so today we're going to talk about the fifth option. Someone say fifth option. Now look to your second choice and say fifth option. Fifth option. And it's this. It's a submission competition. It's a submission competition. So Jesus rolls out this command, right? He's sitting around the table with his disciples, and he's getting ready to kind of end his time on earth. And before he does, he's at the table with his disciples, and John's there. He says, John, okay, I want you to write this down, okay, John? He says, this is a new command I give you, a new command. Forget all the other commandments. I know there's 416 other commandments, and there's the 10 commandments here. Yeah, I get it. But this is the new command I give you. This is what you're going to, this is John, you track it? Write this down. A new command I give you to love one another. To which the disciple says, that's not new. Jesus says, I'm not through. To love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. This was groundbreaking news. This was shocking because now Jesus says, hey, you are to love. You get your cue from me. You are to love how I love. Not how the person next to you love, how the person behind you love, how your last relationship loved. No, that's not what they did in their last relationship. Look, you get your cue from how I love from me. You are to love one another as I have loved you. This was groundbreaking. This is a big deal. And so Paul, one of Jesus' followers, he then takes this idea, this all-encompassing command that Jesus says to love one another. He teases out into the New Testament. And by the way, every time you read the scriptures, every time you read the New Testament, you think about it from the lens of what Jesus says, as I have loved you. Paul takes that command and he applies it to all kinds of relationships. He applies it to specifically a committed relationship, such as marriage. And this is what he says. He says, wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do to the Lord. Now, what can be any clearer than that? Let's pray. Now you're probably thinking, look, see, that's the verse right there. That's the verse where I walked away from church, where I walked away from Christianity. Look, I'm so glad you're here. I really am. I love talking about this. This is so transformational. In fact, so some of you might know this, but our English Bibles, our English Bibles were translated from Greek text. And there were groupings of Greek texts all over the East. They were all over the East, groupings of Greek texts all over the East. And interestingly enough, if you take Paul's oldest manuscript, and you translate it literally word for word, this is actually what it would read. It says, read this. Wives, to your own husbands as you do to the Lord. There's no verb. The word submit isn't in there. Now, before I explain why it isn't in there, I need to explain something else. Look at your neighbor and say, he's getting ready to teach. He's getting ready to teach. Now, before I explain why it's in there, because we'll get there in just a moment, when Apostle Paul's audience heard him say, wives, submit to your husbands, this is what they thought. Like, as us, we would think, what? And huh? They would go, duh, not huh. This wasn't new information for them. And this wasn't new. This wasn't like shocking for them. This is something they expected. This was common ground. Paul was just talking about common ground. They all collectively, they understood this, that wives submit to your own husbands. And so this was just common ground for them. Could you go back? Duh, not huh. This wasn't new for them. And so for them, it wasn't a big deal. But for us, here's the cool thing. For us, it is a big deal. Because in that culture, look, it was understood that wives should submit to their husband. Here's why. Because look, if they don't submit, look, of course we'll submit. Of course, if not, he'll trade us. He'll sell us. He'll accuse us. He'll arrest us. He'll accuse us of some crime, and there'll be no witnesses to bargain for us. Look, of course we'll submit to him. And so this wasn't a big deal for them. But for us, it is. And here's the cool thing, because it is. So, I know you've been waiting for it, so I'm just going to go ahead and say it now. So why? Why no verb in the oldest Greek manuscript? Why the word submit? Why is it in there? Well, the answer is the verb, it comes from the verse before. So, get ready, he's about to teach. Come on, this might be life-changing for some of you, okay? So the verb comes from the verse before. So, in other words, this happens all the time in Greek grammatical way of doing things. This is just what they did. They would make a statement and include a verb, and they'd make the next statement, but the verb wouldn't be inferred, but it wouldn't be included. So the verb would come from the verse before, so they would infer it but not include it. So the million-dollar question is this. What was the verse before? What was the verse before? What was the verse before that comes and includes what this verse is in the next verse? What was the verse? What's the verb in the verse before that comes before that tells us what the verse is? What the verb is? What's the verse before? See, a lot of us don't know what it is. But this is going to, look, this could be life-changing for some of you. In fact, for some of you, it may make you run for the hills. It may make you give up on your relationships. For some of you, it might be just life-changing. It might be transformative for your relationship. This might change everything for your relationship with your spouse, with your significant other, with your future significant other. This might be life-changing for you. Here's the verse that comes before. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Submit to one another. In other words, guys, get ready. It's a submission competition. The submission is mutual. It's mutual. And he says, out of reverence for Jesus. Look, it goes back to Christ every time. It's not about what you've done. It's not about what the Ten Commandments. It's not about the past. Look, the reason why you submit is because out of reverence for Jesus, out of all that he's done for you, out of all the promises that you've kept, that you've broken, that he's forgiven you from, out of everything that you've ever done, he says, out of reverence for Jesus, submit to one another. It's mutual. It's mutual. So when I was studying this, I came across this article from HBR, Harvard Business Review, and in the article they talk specifically about. It's a good article. I'm not dissing it, sort of, but it's a good article. In the article, he talks about specifically about relationships when it comes to men and women in the workplace, and how do you. The point of the article is to provide clarity, okay, for those that are men and women in a workplace and how they could, because when you work with a girl and you go out and you have long business trips and you go out for coffee, things happen, okay? It just does. And so the article is supposed to provide a little bit of clarity of how to set some boundaries. And so I just thought it was interesting because this is kind of the direction, ladies. This is what you have to look forward to submit to, okay? So this is what the article says. So what's an involved male leader to do in regards to the workplace? In the simplest terms, become what we call a thoughtful caveman. That's not very clear. And I don't mean, go back, I don't mind being called a thoughtful caveman. I don't. But you'll never hear a cave woman. You notice that? You never hear a cave woman. So that's not very clear, but maybe it helps in the next verse. In the next one, it says, so healthy, mature, self-aware men understand and accept their distinctly male neural architecture. I don't even know what that means. This is supposed to provide clarity. I'm not even sure what this means. So this is what you have to look forward to submitting to, ladies. And by the way, I don't think, ladies, I think you wouldn't have a problem submitting to these guys, but come on. How many of these are there actually, right? How many healthy, mature, self-aware men? How many of these are there, right? You're probably thinking like, if we find one, let's capture it, okay? We'll study it, we'll replicate it, we'll duplicate, we'll pass them around. How many of them are there? And so I did my own poll, okay, of how many men you actually have to look forward to that are worth submitting to, that are not worth submitting to. And this is the number I came up with. 100% of them. 100% of them are not worth submitting to. But yet, he says, out of love for one another. In other words, ladies, yo mans, okay, deal out of yo man's box as if it was your box, out of reverence for Jesus. And so, as we move on, because what's about to happen, what comes next is shocking. What comes next is shocking. What comes next is why what came first is so offensive to us. It's so shocking. They couldn't believe what they were about to hear. Okay, I'm sure you're just on the side of your seats, right? You're just ready. What comes next is what's so offensive to us. And this is what he says to husbands. Paul continues, he says, husbands, love your wives. Love your wives. For them, you think, of course, no, for them in the first century, they're like, what? I don't have an obligation to my woman? My woman has an obligation to me. Love my, and he continues to say, just as, and this is the key, this is the connection, this is the link. Every time you read the New Testament, you should look for these words, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Now, this is primarily a Christian audience that Paul is speaking to, and these guys are thinking, whoa, wait. I know this story. This doesn't end well for Jesus. This doesn't end well for Jesus. This doesn't end well for Christ. I know this story. But he says, look, out of submission, look, Christ loved the church, gave himself up for her. You ought to give yourself up for your wife. And he continues and says, in the same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He says, in other words, if you can't get the whole theology thing about Christ and the church, if you can't get it, let's make it really simple for you. Look, in the same way, husbands, love your wives, love your girl, love your fiance, love the one you're engaged with, love the one that you hope to marry. Love them just as Christ loved the church and he gave himself for her. He says, love them just as if you would love yourself. Just as if you would love yourself. In other words, deal out of her box as if it was your own. Submit to her just like you want her to submit to you. It will only serve you to serve her. And he goes on and says, he who loves his wife loves himself. He says it's kind of a mystery. It's kind of a mystery. When two become one, this idea of when two become one in a marriage relationship, when two become one, it's kind of a mystery. But you're to love her just as you love yourself. And this is why I said, what comes next? What comes next? What comes next is why it came first. It's so offensive to us because they're thinking, what? I have a responsibility to my wife. I have a responsibility to women. I have to care and to protect. I have a responsibility to women. This was brand new for them. They could not imagine this. They could not fathom. This was impossible for them to grasp. But you know what, ladies? You know who was the person that actually introduced this idea of equality? Because that's what these guys were thinking. Well, are you saying there's some type of equality between us? You know who was the first person to roll out this big idea in a big way that made a big difference in our culture about equality with men and women? The first person who introduced it, who rolled it out, who made a big difference for you, who validated you, who went to bat for you. You know the first person who kind of rolled this out in a big way? It's Jesus. Jesus argued for your worth. Jesus argued for your value. Jesus argued for you. He argued for your dignity before this was a category to anybody else. It wasn't on anybody's radar. Jesus says, look. There's worth and value in you. It's funny because when Jesus in the scriptures, the Pharisees tried to question Jesus and get him caught up and pit him against the crowd, but it never worked. And one afternoon, someone came to him with a group of religious leaders, and they said to him, Jesus, I have a marriage question for you. And they said, Jesus said, go ahead, pitch, right? And they said, should a man divorce his wife for any and every reason? Because the idea was like there was some religious leaders that were teaching that you can divorce your wife for any and every reason. She burnt the toast. She didn't pick up the kids from work. From any and every reason, you could divorce your wife. And so they said, is there like a list of things? Is there a list? I'm looking for a list. Is there a list of things? And Jesus looks at them and says, there's none. Now go home and love her the way that you love yourself. Jesus added so much worth and value to you. I think for nothing alone, you should become a Jesus follower just because of this. He added so much value and worth to you. In fact, when Jesus died and resurrected from the grave, the first people there to witness his resurrection, because there wasn't a lot of people there, to 9, 8, 7, no, that just wasn't, there were just a few. Women ran to see to see his resurrection because they believed in him so much. And a woman was there to actually witness his resurrection. And that's a big deal. You know why? Because in court, if they even let them in, they had no value. No one valued the testimony of a woman. And yet Jesus added so much value.
Yes, he did. Yes. That's good. Yes.
So back to the guys. Guys, his point. What is life to you? I don't have a life. I don't, no. You got a life. Come on. What is life to you? What is life to you? Whatever it is, put her before that. Whatever it is. Put her before that. What is life to you? Put her before that. And submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. So how do you do this? How do you get hopes, dreams, and desires out of the expectation box and back in the hopes, dreams, and desire box? How do you do that? Right? I'm not going to have children. I don't want kids anyways, right? It's okay. We'll downsize, or I'll just Airbnb. It's fine. Or we don't need a lot of money. Love will keep us alive. I don't have to travel. It's okay. I don't want to eat and live indoors. It's all right. I don't have to drive a car. I'll Uber and Lyft everywhere. It's fine. So how do we keep everything in this box? How do we get it outside of the expectations box and back into the hope, dreams, and desires box? And it starts with what we talked about last week. is that you decide, that's what it is. It's not a feeling, you decide that they don't owe you anything, right? She doesn't owe you, he doesn't owe you, they don't owe you. But it also continues with this big idea, it's mutual. It's a submission competition. I'm submitting myself out of reverence for Jesus. I'm submitting myself to one another. So what's in your box? This is a little bit of homework for you. What's in your box? All right? Now, I know what you're thinking, like, I just can't wait to go. Long way home, we'll talk about this. No. Don't wait on the drive home, okay? Okay, actually wait for the drive home. Wait for a couple days and then ask, okay? What's in your box? What's in your box? Ladies, or sorry, guys, ask the ladies. Ask your girl, ask your fiance. If you're single, ask yourself, what's in your box? What's in my box? What's in your box? And guys, when you ask her, she might just faint. She might faint that you're asking her what's in your box. And if she doesn't faint, she'll get mad. Because you've been married for 10 years or you've been together for 10 years and you still don't know what's in my box. And it's true, you don't know what's in her box. But this is the question you have to ask. What's in your box? And ladies, let me tell you now. When you ask your mans, what's in his box? I'm saying what he's going to say. Nothing. Nothing. Is the Giants on? Nothing. But guys, this is complicated. I know it's hard. You got to tell them what's in the box, right? Because you're expecting them to fulfill it, and you haven't talked about it. You got to open up. And this, for us, guys, I'll be honest. I'll be first to admit it. Look, we're nervous to share what's in our box because we don't know what you're going to think, Jay. We don't know. So you got to ask, but what's in your box? And then for some of you, this is going to be really hard for you to do, but after you ask what's in your box, I want you to stop talking, okay? And listen. See, this what's in your box question, this is the all-in question. This is the I'm all in. I'm all about your box question. I want to know what your hopes, dreams, and desires are. I'm all in. I'm in for it. I'm in for it, baby. Oh, no, that was not planned. I just said it. What's in your box? This is the all-in question, right? Because the all-in question this is the less self question. Because less self people are happier people. It is. You find people that are happy, they're less self. Because less self people are happier people, and less self relationships are the richer relationships. So I know what some of you are thinking. Well, Akeem, this is, it sounds kind of good. I kind of get it, but you have no idea. Like, come on. I have some objections, okay? Maybe that's you. Maybe you have an objection. Like, Akeem, if I let the gas off, if I kind of back up a little bit, man, you have no idea what they're gonna do. You have no idea what she's gonna do. Like she have no idea how much money she's gonna spend, right? You have no idea. He's never gonna come home from work, right? He's never gonna play with the kids. Like you have no idea. Like I can't let up. Like I have an objection. I get it. You're what? I'm what? I'm afraid, right? I'm afraid he won't. I'm afraid he will. I'm afraid she'll stop. I'm afraid she'll start. I'm afraid. But can I ask you another question if I can find this? If that's what all your relationship is all about, right? If your relationship is all about this tug of war idea, right? Of you know what, I'm gonna give until he gives to me, and if he doesn't pull, then I'm gonna pull. And if this is what your relationship just consists of right here, if it's just all about this idea of tug of war, of I'm gonna hold on to my end of the rope, right? I'm gonna hold on to my end of the rope. I'm gonna hold on to my end of the rope. If this is what your relationship is all about, it's just about this. This is what's nope. It's not gonna work. Nope. There's no hope until you let go of the rope. If you're thinking, okay, honey, you heard what he said. about letting go of the rope. So on the count of three, okay, I know you're on that side, and on the count of three, together, okay, we have to do this, okay? On the count of three, I'm gonna go my side, but you have to let go your side, okay? Because if I let go, I'm afraid this all go to your side. We're gonna be living out of your box. We're gonna be living out of your hopes, dreams, desires, okay? So on the count of three, 1, 2, nope. There's no hope until you let go of the rope. And because you're a Christian, if you're a Christian, you have to go first. And here's why. Because God, through Christ, let go his end of the rope for you. Because God, through Jesus Christ, stepped down out of heaven and he let go of the rope on your end. When you had no promises, right? When you didn't owe him anything, he decided to step down and said, look, I'm going to give you everything, regardless of the fact that you're going to give back to me, regardless if you're going to trust me or not. Look, I'm going to let go of the rope for you. So you have to let go of your side of the rope. It's just one of the things that happily ever after couples, no, it's mutual. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Because happily ever after couples, happily ever after couples, this is what they know. They put each other first by going first in an effort to be last. It's just one of the things that happily ever after couples know. So, talk about it. What's in your box? And then what do you do with what's in your box? How do you live, right, after you've got it out of the expectations box and back into the hopes, dreams, and desire box? I still have this. I still have this. I still want to have children. I still, like, what do you do with what's in this box? And we'll talk about that next week. And if you're single, don't miss next week. So let me pray for you. God, thank you so much for who you are and for your